basically what we want to discuss today is closing out the Summer Youth Employment Program. A lot of organizations have wrapped up the programs, and we have reports that are going to be coming due. I want to discuss the process of closing out the grant. In most situations, you guys have received two grants from us. You received a 14-071 and then your grant number, or 14-072 and your grant number. So what we're going to have to do at this point is delineate costs for those grants, and we're going to walk through the whole process of closing out this grant. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my computer. And I'm actually going to walk through what you're going to need to do. Share my screen. Okay, the first thing I'm going to go to is the expenditure summary and payment request report form. This is something all of you guys are very familiar with. This is what you've submitted to me with every time you uploaded a payroll in WorkNet, indicating your cost for your total grant. So this is just a mock-up that what I've done. So basically what you've done is you've put your grants, 14071 and 14072. In this particular situation, I'm just saying that this grantee received $150,000 in total funding. And with the budget between the two grants was budgeted out for $105,000 in youth wages, $30,000 in program services, and $15,000 in admin. And what you've been doing is reporting your costs, so your previous reported expenditures and your current expenditures, and then giving us the balance of where you're at with your grant. So we're just going to use this as my example base on what our next steps are going to be. Due October 30th is the DGR, the Department Grantee Report, and this is what we're working towards to filling this out. In the download box, and I hope you were able to download the files that were attached in this webinar, and you'll have time afterwards, but there's two documents. The next document I'm going to show you is one of them that was in that download file. Basically what this is what I want you to complete for distinguishing your costs. So for those that have two grants, we just have a small number that have one grant, and that's not going to be a problem because you're going to delineate all those costs to that one grant. But for most of you grants, we have to associate your expenditures per grant. And this is the form you're going to be using for this. So if you take a look at this, basically it's your grantee name, your two grant numbers, who it's prepared by, and then if it's a final report, the final report date. In the first column, you have grant 071 budget. So you're going to go look at your grant agreement and your scope of work and your budgets for that 071, and you're going to tell me, basically what your grant amount was. So in this particular example, what I'm showing you is we had $35,000 budgeted for youth wages, $10,000 budgeted for program services, and say $5,000 for administration. Then what you're going to do is explain to me what your expenditures were with this grant. And what I would recommend is basically, use this grant as your first out. So any expenditures occurred in the program, you would expend to the 071 grant first. So an example would be, I'm going to go back to my expenditure report form. So in my expenditure report form, I am showing that I have a $98,650.5, which was prior expenditures to the grant, plus another $20,500, which is current expenditures. So I have $119,150 expended in youth wages. I'm going to take that amount and I'm going to distribute it based upon the grants themselves. So $35,000 of that would have come from the 071 grants. And then of that $119,000 that I expended, I'm going to take that $35,000 away. And then $84,150.50 came from the 072 grant. So basically what I'm doing is I'm attributing my expenditures to each one of those grants. And so it shows that I overexpended youth wages by $14,150, which is the amount that I show on this expenditure report form, which is a consolidated form. So I'm just breaking this information out by the two grants. Now the program services, I am showing $12,000 expended there and $6,550 are the total amount that I expended, which is $18,550. I'm going to attribute those costs, so I'm going to take $10,000 from my program services for the 071 grants, and then that leaves me with $8,500 remaining of expenditures. So I have $11,450, which was the amount that I showed in that consolidated expenditure report form that I've been used to filling out. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my admin. My total admin expenditures was $7,600 plus the $3,520 of current expenditures. That leaves me $11,120.75 that I expended in admin. So I'm going to expend out the 071 grants, and I'm taking that amount and then attributing the rest to the 02 grants, which gives me my total expenditures for this. So basically, all we're doing is we're allocating your expenditures by grants. And this is something that I need internally, and I need for you to do internally for me, because then I have to put this in our GRS system for costing out your grants, and we have to have this information for closing out the grants, because we have to attribute your cost per grant. To me, this is the easiest way to do it, is to expend out your first grant first, and then expend out your second grant. Now remember, in your budgets, we have a 20% flex on all line items except for admin. Admin, there's no flexibility. So if you overexpend admin, that's not going to allow us to put the cost in without doing some sort of a waiver. And you cannot overexpend admin if it has to be 10% of your expenditures. So if you're over 10% of your expenditures in admin, it can't be charged to the grant, because it's required that no more than 10% of admin can be expended on this grant. Now you can go over on youth wages and program services, and in this particular example it shows that I went over on youth wages. We have a 20% flex on youth wage or on the other line items, so you can go over or under those line items by 20% without having to do a budget modification. So the intent of what we're doing is, if we have to do some closeout waivers or modifications, we're only doing it on the 072 grants. This grant right here, and then we don't have to worry about doing a modification on both grants. So I'd like to make it very clean closeout on the 071 grant, and if we do have to do any closeout waivers or modifications, they're only going to be done on the 072 grant. Now I want you to also look at there's a statement up here that says costs cannot be incurred on the 072 grant prior to July 1st. So if you look at your grant agreement, that grant started July 1st. Any cost that you have incurred in June has to go to the 071 grant. So if you're looking at your budget, and there may be situations, and I'm hoping there's very few situations where we would have to modify the 071 grant because of expenditures in June. I'm thinking that most of you guys are going to be fine with that. But if we have to, we'll have to take a look at that, and you'll have to get a hold of me on an individual basis, and we'll take a look and see if we have to do some sort of a closeout modification or a budget modification to align our line items here. But just remember, trial balances are to accompany this, and we're going to go into that too. But your trial balances have to match up also with what you're reporting in this. And everybody's trial balances may be a little different. I know some grantees have a trial balance and have line items by grant. So they would have to submit a trial balance for the 071 grant and a trial balance for the 072 grant. I know some organizations, their trial balance is for the program, so it shows the the $150,000 budget, and then it shows the expenditures based upon that. The main thing is that your trial balances that you're submitting has to support your revenue, which is your budget amount, and it has to support your expenditures. So if there's two trial balances that have to be submitted, then those have to be added up, and it has to support your final cost, which is this total line item down here at the bottom. And so in this particular case, we have an overage in youth wages. We have money left in program services, money left in administration, for a total refund. Basically, the amount that's going to have to be given back to us would be $1,178.75. And so this is, just an example of what I'm showing you. Now what we're going to do is we're going to translate that over to the DGR. And then once we walk through the DGR, I'm going to open it up for some questions on the financial side, and then we'll go into the program side and the performance side. So based upon this, you have to complete this document right here. And this is our department-wide grant reporting that's required. So this is the document that's to be submitted to me by October 30th. And what I need for you to do then is for your grant numbers, you're going to put your 14-071 and then whatever your grant number is. And it's going to be 14-072 and then your grant number. You're going to complete the grantee name, the from and to date, and then in this particular case, the start date is 6-1-2014. Now we're using that start date because the 071 grant does have that start date. Now the 072 is actually a July 1st start date, but based upon the two grants together, the program started on June 1st. Please provide your prepared by and contact phone number and email, so because there'll be cases where we're going to need to get a hold of the key person for this report. So if there's questions or if we need to make adjustments to it, then we need to make sure we're contacting the right person. Now, if you are done with your program and all of your costs are done and incurred by the end of September, we can close this grant out, and I would prefer that. So if you are completely done and you're comfortable with your numbers and you have all of your costs reported, then you're going to check this box, and this will be your final report. And then once we close it out, your responsibilities with the grant are done. If you still have costs in October that you're finalizing, you still have to complete this based on September, and your due date here is going to be 9/30/2014. So this is covering the end of September. You're not putting anything in here related to October. So if you still do have costs and you're still finalizing your program, this will not be a final report, so you do not check that box. Now what I strongly recommend, though, if you're going to be ending the program this month, we don't have to wait until January, which is when the new reports due. I want your final reports submitted as soon as possible. So as soon as you have your production done, as soon as your Illinois WorkNet system is up to date, and as soon as all of your costs have been reported and are incurred, then you need to submit a final report. And if there's funds available, we're still doing some realignment, and if there's funds available still that you have to return, then we need to get that process done as soon as possible. So you may be submitting this report to me due the 30th of this month, and you may end up turning around and doing this report again and checking it as a final and submitting it to me on November 15th or November 30th so we can close out the grant. Okay, so the top parts you're going to fill out. Now, you can check this box here. This basically says that another system has been updated with the information for your deliverables, and that system is Illinois WorkNet. So go ahead and click that box because that indicates that your information in WorkNet has been updated. Then you're going to go down to Section 1, which is your expenditure reporting. And here I just pre-populated this based upon my example. This is going to be for both grants again. So you're going to be pulling this information from this bottom section here of your total expenditures. So we have 119. Let me see if I can do a copy paste on this possibly. Just to make it a little quicker here. Nope, that's not going to work. Sorry. So we have 119,150. I'm going to transfer that number over, 119,150, into my expenditures line item. And unfortunately, this document was designed without giving us enough space, so I'm just going to unprotect it here so I can widen that. And just for your information, there isn't a password on this, so if you do run into that, you can just go up to your file and collect, let me set this again, but you can just go to file and do unprotect, and then you can make an adjustment on that. And I'm sorry that wasn't wide enough, but that's basically what you can do with that. As far as reporting your cost, Now remember, this quarter is for July, August, and September, so most of you may not have a lot of prior report costs, June costs. And honestly, I'm not very concerned about how you separate these costs out between the prior reporting expenditures and the current reporting expenditures. I'm assuming most of it's going to fall under your current reporting expenditures as long as your total expenditures is accurate. So in this next particular case, I have $18,550. So I can just put 8,550 here and say 10,000 here for my $18,550 in cost associated with that one. And then for my administration, I have $11,120.75. So I'll just put that there and that there. So I have my $11,120.75 there for my total expenditures of $148,821.25. So basically what we're doing again is this report is covering both grant years. You're populating this information based upon this bottom section here, which is your total amount. And this document you have to submit to me too with the GRS, so that way I know how to attribute your cost per grant. So you're attributing it per grant. This is your total amount of expenditures. This amount is going over to the DGR report on this document here. And then as a result of that, we have $1,178.75, which is this amount here, $1,178.75 that is unexpended. Under Section B, this is a matching amount. That's not applicable to us. We skip that. Under Subpart C, grant funds received and cash received, you need to complete this section here. Now, we did the cash request for you in June, and we gave you 30% of the grant. And now, once again, I'm not going to be too concerned about how much is in the prior grant received and how much is in the current grant received, as long as the amount that you receive from us is accurate. So in this particular case, I'm saying that we received 100% of the grant. So I said 45% or 45,000 was received in the prior quarter, 105 was received in this quarter. And I have expended, and I'm going to move this up here, I have expended $148,821.25, which remains $1,178.5 grant funds on hand. So the grant funds on hand is the amount that is unexpended. So it's your grant amounts, this amount here, minus your funds expended, and that will be the grant funds on hand, and that will be the amount that will have to be returned to us. So when you're doing if you're doing this as a closeout, this document will be sent in, and then you'll also have to send in a check for that amount. And I can send you information that will go to our accounting office, and I'll send you the contact information of who that goes to. But that amount has to come in along with the DGR. So the DGR you're going to send in electronically, and then the check will follow up by mail. So that's just one thing I want to make clear is that amount, your total grant amount minus your expenditures will be the grant funds on hand, and that's what's going to be returned to our department. Now, another example may be you didn't receive all of the grant funds on hand, so you may have only, in this particular case, I'm going to say we gave you guys, $90,000. So there's an additional $15,000 of grant funds that we still have within our department that we did not submit to you. And then if you had grant funds on hand here, then that would be additional money that you had to return. So if your expenditures were $15,000 less here, then that would be the grant funds that we still have internally plus the grant funds on hand. And I hope I'm not confusing you with this, but some organizations did not receive all the money that was in their budget because of need. We did the cash request based upon your need, and so not everybody had the expenditures, to meet their grant funds. So anyway, moving on, then if there's any interest or there's not going to be any program income in this particular case because you didn't earn or you didn't charge anybody for services, so there won't be any income. But there could be potentially be program interest that was earned on the money. If you do have program interest, then you have to enter that there. So if we had $20 and then another $15 in interest, that would be $35 of interest earned. Now the interest has to be paid out first. So that has to be distributed out of the grant. So your current balance would be a zero. So if there is any interest, that interest has to be expended first. So there's no interest that's actually being returned from the grant. Okay, that is basically going over the financial part of this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the webinar, and I'm going to kind of take a look at questions here real quick and see if there's anything pertinent that we have here. And if you do have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat section now. Okay, current reporting period. Okay. Current reporting period is going to be, for this report, it is actually 7/1 to 9/30. You're correct on that because the prior DGR encompassed the June. So the DGR reporting period is 7/1 to 9/30. We have a question. We have not submitted uploads in Illinois WorkNet for youth wages incurred from 9/8 to 9/30, which our organization covers payroll dates 9/30 to 9/15, nor DGR uploads for expenditures incurred after our last upload. Should we submit uploads for both payrolls separately, although they will be expended as of 9/30? Now, as far as your payroll uploads in WorkNet, you can submit them together if you want to, or separate, depending upon which is clearer for your organization. That's not going to make a difference on this particular report here. But on this report, what you have to report is expenditures through 9/30 for the DGR. You're not going to include any expenditures for October because that will be on the next quarterly report. So for the DGR, the only cost you're reporting and the only performance you're reporting is that through 9/30. And like I said, we do have some grantees that I know did complete, in mid-September, so I'm hoping that they'll be able to report all their costs and close out the grant. But if you can't, don't worry about it. You don't have to close out with this report. What I'm going to ask for you to do, though, is close out as soon as possible. So as soon as all your costs are incurred, I don't want us to wait until, Christmas time and we're working on our final reports. I would prefer us to have these reports done, in November if we could. So, are we doing a quarterly report and a separate final report as well? Now, that would be if you can close out, if you have all of your costs incurred and all your performance done by the end of September, this quarterly report can be your final report. So I'm going to share my screen here again real quick. So if by the end of September, and she's correct on this, this will be 7-1-2014, and then this is going to be 9-30-2014. Now, if you've incurred all of your costs and everything by 9/30, you're going to check this box right here and say, this is my final report. And then your information down here is going to reflect your final expenditures. And then your grant funds on hand, if there's any grant funds on hand or any funds that you need to return, it will be reflected on this report. And we will close out your grant based upon this. If you are not ready and you don't have all your costs done by 9/30, then this will not be your final closeout report. You do not check that box. You keep that open. And then you report your expenditures based upon the end of September. The only thing I'm asking is by the end of October, we're done with this. Then I want you to get a hold of me and I want to complete this document again. So what we will do then is we'll make this, say, 10/30. And that needs to be a, and then you're going to click this as your final report, and then you'll document your expenditures based upon your final numbers. But I want to close out these grants as soon as we possibly can. As soon as you're done with the program and as soon as you've incurred all of your costs, then we want to close this out, and we don't want to wait until December to close these. So let me switch back. Okay. Okay, will you be sending out the allocation GER that you just discussed? I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to on that. What on the grant expenditure report, you guys have received the grant agreements. So if you do not know, or if you don't have a copy of your grant agreement, send me an email, and I can send you basically a grant agreement. But in your grant agreement, there is the budget section, which indicates what the line items are for both of your grants. So you need to look at your grant agreement to make sure, and you've been reporting on that cumulative in the expenditure report forms. So basically what we're doing is on that one form, we're just separating it out. And it is in your grant agreement that you should have internally. But if you don't have it, let me know, and I can send that to you so you know what your budget line items are by grant. And I hope that answered your question on that particular one. And like I said, we can get that information to you, so that's not a problem. And let's see. And I have a question. All expenditures are paid except program-specific audits, which is scheduled for November. Can we close out the program and book those costs as an accrual? Yes, you can. Yes, and I would prefer you to do that. That's not a problem. You can go ahead and book those costs and close out. Like I said, if you have the capacity to close out, it's much easier for you to do this once and close it out as opposed to having, to do another report in another month or whatever. So do show those as accrued costs and then close out your grant. Okay. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to go back to my sharing my screen. Now, if you have questions, please continue to type them in and we'll get to those. But I'm going to go to the performance side now and what needs to be completed on the performance side. Okay, so we've walked through the DGR, kind of indicated what we need to do for the financial side. Now we're going to go to our performance side. Under Subpart A, Scope of Work, you do not have to complete anything under this section at all. That's part of why we check this box up here that says, check this box if another system has been updated. Illinois WorkNet has all your information, and I can access anything I need as far as reports and where you're at through Illinois WorkNet. So you do not have to put any information in the Subpart A, Scope of Work. Subpart B, specific schedule reports and schedules. I mean, you don't really need to complete that section either. Basically, the only reporting that's required is the DGR. We have required uploads, payroll uploads, and your expenditure report forms based upon when your payroll is completed. So Subpart D, there's nothing that really needs to be included in that. The only section you're going to be filling out here is Subpart C, performance measures. And this is actually coming from WorkNet, and I'm going based upon our DCEO state data right now. So, but I put in 2,500 as are required. Obviously, yours is going to be less. If you look in your scope of work again, it's going to be the number of people that you plan to have placed in a work site in your grant agreement. So, and that's the number of youth placed in work experience. And now I'm going to go to WorkNet, and you should be familiar with this screen. This is your dashboard, and this is basically where all your information. What I'm showing you right now is the DCEO total numbers, and you guys did a great job. I mean, we did really well on our performance. For the DGR report, what you're going to be reporting on is those that are placed with approved payroll entry. So in this particular case, we have 2,685 people who have been placed and they have an approved payroll entry. Now before I go to the DGR, you'll see above that we have 151 that are placed without a payroll entry. There is one or two cases maybe where I have not approved a payroll because I'm lacking some documentation. If you have somebody that was new that had come on board, especially for those that have it, we've been realigning funds for, and you maybe have somebody that's just new in the program, they could be enrolled but have not received a payroll yet, so they could be in that number. But what we need for you to do is if you have something in there that says placed without payroll entry, you need to look into that and see why they haven't had a payroll entry. Maybe they were placed, but then they never actually went to the job. So you'll need to kind of do some research and see why you have people that are placed without a payroll. But the number you're going to be using for a report was going to be this placed with approved payroll entry. So that's 2,685 for the DCEO, all grantees. So I'm going to go to my DGR report, and it's 2,650. What was that number again? I'm sorry. $2,685. So 2,685 is the number of youth that have been placed. Once again, you got your previous actual and your current actual. I'm not going to be a stickler as long as your total amount is the accurate amount. And like I said, this is verifiable by us and here too, because I can get these reports through WorkNet. So as long as what you've actually placed and whoever received the payroll is correct, I'm fine with that. Previous actual may not have many numbers, or if it does, because that's only going to be the June month. So you may have, a few that were placed in June and received a payroll in June, but predominantly it's going to be under your current actual. Okay, and then we're going to go to the work readiness improvement. So you have 2,000, in this particular case, 2,685 people who are placed at a work site. And if you're placed at a work site, you need to have had a pretest. So you have 2,685 people that were placed at work sites. And I'm going to go back to my WorkNet reports. And of those, I'm sorry, let me go back to this document one more time. I don't want to confuse you. What we're looking at right now is the work readiness improvement. So our standard is a minimum of 70% of the people score 70 or higher on the post-test. So we're hoping to see at least improvement of the total amount by 70%. So we have 2,685 people who have been placed at a work site and should have a pretest. I'm going to go back to my WorkNet here. And we have those that have completed right here. So if you're looking at your dashboard, you're going to go down to this section where you have your pretest and your post-test. And of those post-tests, this is the number that has completed. So we have 2,534 that have completed, which is really good when you take a look at the total number that have been placed. I think that we did a good job with that. And then if you click on this, it's going to take you to a report. And the report's going to look like this. So, and I'm not going to go down because this is live data, but it's going to give you this report, which is going to give you the names of individuals and then basically a status. And then what you're going to do is you can export this document. And when you export that document, it's going to give you an Excel document that's going to look kind of like this. And it's just going to be for your organization. It's not going to be, and I'm going to remove some of this. It's not going to be for anybody else's organization but yours. But it's going to give you the post-test score. So you're going to get a post-test score for everybody that completed the post-test. You can do a sort on this, and then you can just add up the number that had a 70 or above. And you can see here, these guys did a great job. I mean, a lot of people scored very, very, very well on their post-test. So I don't think there's going to be any issues with anybody not making that 70% mark of scoring 70 or higher on the post-test. So once you figure out that number of people that scored 70 or higher on the post-test, you're going to come back to the DGR, and you're going to put that in. And I'm just going to say it's 2,500. So that'll give us the number of people that were placed and had a pretest and those that scored 70 or higher on the post-test. Then the next measure is percent of youth fully completing work experience. So we have 2,685 statewide that were placed at a work site. And then back in WorkNet again, you're going to have this right under here that in the green it says completed assessment and work experience unduplicated. And in this particular case we have 2,362 people, which is going to go back on this. 2,362 that completed basically the pretest, the post-test, and had at least one payroll upload. Our kind of a success measure for that is 70% on that also. And just looking at the state numbers, that's not going to be a problem. You guys did a great job. You got, looks like you got a lot of your kids to take the post-test. You guys really did a good job with the program and following up, with your youth. So that is what we're going to do on a performance side of this and using WorkNet, and that's what I anticipate seeing, when this comes in. So your dashboard is where you need to be. Your dashboard is where you're going to collect most of this information. You're going to get the number that have been enrolled. You're going to get those that have completed a pre-assessment, post-assessment, and has at least one payroll upload. And then you're going to figure out, based upon the post-assessment completed, how many people scored 70 or higher on the post-assessment test. So all of the information you need for your performance is right here. The only thing that you need from your scope of work or your grant agreement is your plan number. And like I said, this number right here you can get from your scope of work, and it's also in your grant agreement document. So then after that, subpart A, you don't have to complete, and subpart B, this is just basically deals with assignments, job assignments, and then full and part-time equivalency, and this does not apply to our grant. Success stories, that is in WorkNet. Please, please, please get your success stories in. We've had a lot submitted and it's been great, and we're going through them, and that's going to be definitely used. If you do have any additional feedback back, please feel free to put something in there if you have suggestions for next year and running the program and how to make something easier. We always want to hear that. And then we need your grantee signator. The grantee signature has to be an authorized signator. So you need to look at your grant agreement again and see who the authorized signator is. In some cases, it is your CEO. It could be your CFO. But in your grant agreement document, your organization assigned who was authorized, and you can have a designee also. So there may be 2 or 3 people that are designated to sign the document. We just need to make sure it's somebody that, based upon the grant agreement, is approved. And then we need their name and title and then the date on that also. So that basically takes care of what we're looking for this DGR report. Now the one thing I want to mention now, and we're going to pop over here, is this is a very, very, very simple trial balance example. With the DGR, you need to support it with a trial balance. So we need to have revenue. There may be, like I said, each organization may be different on how you're doing your accounting systems. I know that there's some organizations that have the grants separate. So they're going to have a trial balance for the 071 grant, and they're going to have a trial balance for the 072 grant. As long as when we're looking at the trial balances and they add up to your total grant amount, that's fine. But the trial balance has to have your revenue. You have to show us what the revenue is, and the revenue has to be the total amount that you receive from our department. And then it all has to show your expenditures. And your expenditures for here, like your salary, needs to correlate with what's on the DGR. So your cost categories on your DGR is your youth wages, program services, contractual, other, and admin. So there needs to be some sort of a crosswalk, so when we're looking at your trial balance, and it has to come from your accounting system, that we understand how these costs were attributed out and then how they were assigned to this right here in your trial balance or in your DGR. So we can tie these costs, these expenditures, to your accounting system's trial balance. And like I said, it's fine if you submit 2 as long as it adds up. If you're submitting it, 1 for each grant, that's fine. If you're submitting it for the program, that's fine. You just need to tell us how it was charged off. And even if you have to write on your trial balance, you can do that. You can handwrite and let us know, okay, these cost categories is what is added up to like your youth wages. So it may be youth wages and then your employer FICA and workman's comp. Program services, you may have to say, that may be obviously some of your staffing costs along with if there's any transportation costs or anything along those lines. But we need to be able to track that based upon your trial balance. And that's probably one of the hardest things and the biggest things we come back at you guys a lot with is that, okay, you need to tell us how this trial balance, how you came up with these expenditure numbers based upon your trial balance. Okay. Then the only last thing I can think of that I want to discuss with you guys is, let me get to that section here. We talked about record retention, and this is in your grant agreement again. You guys are responsible for your records, and in your grant agreement it says you must maintain your records for 4 years after a final written approval of the closeout document. And that's basically what we're talking here is once we mark the DGR as closed and we go through the whole process and it's closed out, you'll receive a letter from our department saying that it's an approved, closed out. So, but you must maintain your client records and must maintain your fiscal records for 4 years following that period of time. So it is your responsibility, like I said, to make sure that you're maintaining your records and your client records specifically too for that period of time. Okay, I am going to go back. I'm going to stop sharing. And then if there are any other questions, this is an opportunity for you to type them in. Otherwise, please feel free to give me a call, send me an email. Like I said, we want to try, and the reason I wanted to have this is so that this closeout process is relatively smooth and clean. We're still going to have hiccups. Like I said, I know we're probably going to have to do some closeout waivers on grants. I would prefer them just being on just one grant, not having to do modifications to closeout or waivers on two grants. Just keep in mind that there is no flex on admin. And admin cannot be more than 10% of your expenditures. So if you did budget less than 10% and you overexpended your admin, you're going to have to send me a note and explain the situation. And we may go ahead and say, okay, since you're under your 10% of expenditures, we'll have to do a modification to include some more funds in admin for that. But it cannot be more than 10% of your expenditures. Obviously, youth wages, if you go over 70%, that's totally fine. We do have 20% flex on all the other line items, so as long as you're within that 20% flex, you do not need to do a modification or a closeout waiver as we're closing out. But we're trying to make this process as simple as possible, so we're not having to do a lot of back and forth with closeout waivers or having to modify a grant because of expenditures. So that's basically where we're at. Will these download files be available elsewhere after this meeting? What I will do is I will send an email out to everyone and just do a little bit of a recap, and I'll include these documents in the email. And if you don't receive it, just send me an email and say, I need these documents. Can you please send them to me? But I will definitely send this out to my distribution list so everybody gets it. And I have on the downloaded final quarterly report below, I don't see a place for a signature. Do you need it? The quarterly report, yes. We need a signature for, let me get to this, but not for the consolidated report. So what we will need is a signature on the DGR, yes, and it has to be an authorized signature, and it's down here at the very bottom. But if you're talking about the expenditure report form by grantee, we do not need a signature on that one. I do want this, though, included with the DGR. This has to be a backup of that. So when you're submitting your DGR, you need to submit this along with it, along with your trial balance, because this is the only thing that's going to tell me how to break out those costs per grant. And that's something that we have to do to close out both of the grants. But it does not have to be signed. Okay. And let's see if we have anything else here. Okay, if wages are slightly less than 70%, is this acceptable? Let's deal with this on a case-by-case basis. We'll have to see where you're at with your expenditures on everything, and it just depends upon what you mean by slightly less. I mean, we want 70%. If it's 69.99, there may be some leeway there, but we'll deal with that on a case-by-case basis. And like I said, it'll also depend upon how your other costs are coming in. If you expended 10% on admin, but you know came in at 65% on youth wages, then that's not necessarily going to be acceptable. Okay. I'll give you guys a few more minutes. If there's any other questions, please type them in. Otherwise, hopefully this was clear, and what we anticipate to see for our closeouts. And like I said, October 30th is when I need to have all the DGRs, your trial balances in, and I go ahead and submit the consolidated report too, and then because I can get this information in the GRS. If it's not a closeout, I still want all 3 documents, and then once you're ready to close out, then let's get that process started as soon as possible too. So I'm hoping by before December that we'll have everybody closed out, and we'll be able to not have to worry about this during the holidays. Okay, if there's nothing else, you guys all have a great day. Enjoy. Springfield's cold and gloomy and rainy. So I just hope you guys have a great day, and please call, email me, let me know what your questions are. And you guys did a great job. We're really excited about the performance, and we're really hoping that this is going to be something that we can do, next year too, and we can just keep it growing and expanding the program. So have a great day. Thank you so much.